welcome to SVG-TV News for Monday, September 23, 2019. I am Yvette Boynes with the details. Director of the National Emergency Management Organization, Michelle Forbes, is again appealing to Vincentians to be vigilant and heed all precautions issued during the hurricane season. Her comments come on the heels of Tropical Storm Karen, which passed over the island yesterday. The system, which was lingering in the Atlantic, was being closely monitored, and on Sunday morning, SVG was placed under Tropical Storm Watch. Forbes said there were no reports of major damage, though there were heavy rainfall and gusty winds on both the mainland and in the Grenadines. She said though the warning was discontinued, the island is still seeing the lingering effects of Tropical Storm Karen.
This morning also, because we've just been informed by the Port Authority that they had to suspend ferry services because we're becoming dangerous for the ferries from Beckway and the Grenadines to be operating. So we can still see lingering drought during today. Some rough seas, some gusty winds, and even some rainfall, heavy rainfall, as we're still under flood watch. So not much reports of damage. We just had, as I said, the high surf in Beckway. On the west coast, we had 1 or 2 landslides, and the poles that were falling at Gibson Corner, we had 2 poles falling there, and Vinec was able to deal with those into last night. We would have had only 8 persons sought shelter in Myro, but by the evening they went back home. 8 persons sought shelter in the 2 shelters in Myro in particular, but then we didn't have any other shelters that were occupied yesterday during the passage of Tropical Storm Karen. But we continue to monitor today, continue to receive information on any assessments that we may need to carry out.
Forbes said although the tropical storm warning was issued over the weekend, the emergency services were still able to mobilize effectively.
Being it on a Sunday morning and going straight from a watch into a warning would definitely pose some challenge, but the fact that we had information out all weekend, we still encourage persons to listen, because things can change suddenly within a short space of time, overnight, or within a few hours, and that was the case of Karen. On Sunday morning, we were able to mobilize quickly our community structures and our key agencies and also the police. And at that point, Karen looks like it was heading towards the southern Grenadines between Canawan, Union Island, Mustique area. So we were able to contact those communities directly and for them to make the necessary information available to their community persons. So that went fairly well, with a lot with the support of the police, who really went around on the islands to gather that information, and our contact with those persons and in the district disaster committees in Union Island, Myro, Canawan, and Beckway.
The NEMO director said currently the Met services are monitoring another system off the coast of Africa. She said it is important for Vincentians to stay alert as the hurricane season is still very active.
We keep saying it's the hurricane season, and persons need to continue to monitor. And we want to emphasize this carefully, especially when a system is approaching, especially on a weekend, especially on an evening, late evening, because the Met services have been out there with information all weekend, and we basically disseminated the information that the Met services was putting out, if you want to put it that way. So going forward, I just want us to continue to remain vigilant during this hurricane season. There's another system coming off the African coast that should be Lorenzo, if it hasn't upgraded to Lorenzo by now. That one had quite a potential for going straight into, quickly went into a tropical storm system, but it doesn't, no threat to this part of the region at this time. And going forward, we still have a couple of days to go, but no threat to this part of the region at this time. It has been quite an active few weeks, and we need to continue to monitor the systems and the information from the Met services as we go along.
Meanwhile, the NEMO director has sought to clarify what constitutes an essential service, noting that yesterday there were several reports on radio and on social media indicating that persons were called out to work, most of them being persons employed at bakeries and other places where food and beverages are sold. Forbes said when a tropical storm warning is issued and that only essential workers are to report to work, this must be taken seriously, noting that the weather conditions can bring with it heavy rainfall, winds and storm surges, which can be deadly for persons who are caught in them. Emphasizing that tropical storms are dynamic and can change quickly, Forbes said as such, businesses should not be open during such time, as persons should be home or in a shelter.
Sometimes you don't know how bad it's going to impact us. It may not impact us much, but if we don't get it, another country is getting it. We saw yesterday we did not get the heavy rains as we anticipated. Tobago got it, Trinidad got it. Last night Dominica got a good bit of the rainfall also. So it all depends on how the system is moving, what it does when it gets to you, and sometimes it changes so much as it is coming to you, towards you. So a few hours you may have it looking like you have a lot of rainfall, it may change up again and the rainfall may be repositioned on a different part of the system in terms of the quadrant. If you're on the northern side of a system, that tends to be the strongest, you tend to get the strongest winds. And then it depends on how intense the system is, then you get the rainfall throughout. And these systems they're dynamic, they're changing all the time. So the information in terms of the procedures are given to safeguard life and property, because we do not know how the systems are going to behave when it comes up on St. Vincent. But once a warning, the tropical storm warning or the hurricane warning is given for St. Vincent and is within a certain distance and time in terms of hours for St. Vincent, we have to ensure that our people are protected and people may not get off the street, businesses are closed, and people are hunkered down to protect their own life and their property.
The NEMA director further appealed to the business community to adhere to the warnings and consider the lives of their employees.
That's clear. We are still seeing some of our businesses opening during this period, calling out people to work even during the storm. I'm asking those businesses to desist from this practice. You are putting the lives of your workers at risk, and you're also putting your own life at risk because you are going out to operate these businesses. Adhere to the shutdown procedures. The police have had to shut down some businesses, ask them to close over from Dorian and even during the passage of Tropical Storm Karen. I'm asking you please to desist from this practice. Once a shutdown is given, you are to remain closed until the all clear is given. And the all clear is given after discussions with the Met Services and also with the police. And so we really asking persons to adhere to these shutdown procedures and do not put persons at risk. Of course, we know yesterday morning the time frame was short and some businesses would already open, and hence that's why we given at 8 o'clock, so we know persons might take a little time to shut down, but once those orders are given, we expect persons to be indoors by a particular time.
Forbes said essential services are stipulated by law and highlighted persons considered to be working with the essential services, noting that for others who choose to work during a storm, they are putting their lives at risk.
Persons in the health services, utilities, so when like CWS said, they will have their persons on standby or even within their stations for a period of time. Of course, NEMO personnel, police. So just generally those. So if you're a cameraman, no, you're not essential service. If you're at a gas station, no, you're not essential service. If you work in the supermarket, you're not essential. If you work in a bakery, no, you're not essential. Right? The essential services are mainly the police, the health personnel, and the utility companies, and that's governed by law. So that's clearly defined in the law who the essential services are. So you cannot say an employee who works at a fast food is an essential worker. No, it is defined by law, and these are the agencies or the persons within these agencies who may have to provide emergency services during an actual emergency or during the passage of a hazard or impact of a hazard. The reporter camera, not essential service. If you do and put yourself in harm's way, you're taking your own life in your own hand, and you're accepting the risk that you're actually going out in conditions that can be really detrimental to your health and your well-being.
In 3 months' time, St. Vincent and the Grenadines will take up its non-permanent seat on the UN Security Council. Since its election in June, a number of leaders from different countries have sought SVG's support to represent them on the UN Security Council. This is according to Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, who at a recent media conference said it is a big deal for SVG to be elected and to take up its seat on the UN Security Council.
Our election to the Security Council, I can tell you about some of the traffic and documentation and letters that come to me from important leaders across the world about this or that issue, and seeking our opinion, seeking our support. And sometimes you have friends who are urging you to support them on an issue on which some of your friends take different positions. And you have to take your own position through the prism of your own eyes, how you see the reality, and how they touch and concern your own condition and that of international law and the political economy as it exists and is unfolding.
On a visit to SVG last week, the European Union Director General of the Directorate General for International Cooperation and Development, Stefano Mansavasi, said they see the important role the SVG has to play while sitting as a non-permanent member on the UN Security Council.
Special attention to St. Vincent and a special attention to the role that St. Vincent is playing and will play. It is the first time that a small state like St. Vincent will hold a non-permanent seat in the UN Security Council. This is at the same time the recognition of the country and also the recognition of a region. And I think that this seat could be used in order to make the voice and to do the voice of this region, of its specificities, of its vulnerability, like we have seen recently, in particular in the Bahamas with the hurricane, like we see very often, every year in reality. But also to talk about what is the lessons that this part of the world is taking in implementing all what is related to the climate change agenda, to all what related to sustainability.
Ambassador Mansavasi noted the geography of SVG as well as its impact on the world stage.
Specificity of St. Vincent and its leadership also in the region in order to, let's say, shape a more coherent presence of the countries in the world. Small is beautiful and small is important. And we have always said that the small islands are not just, they say, islands for vulnerability. They are telling us a story. They are telling us a story of development, of human development, and of capacity of dealing with opportunities and also difficulties.
The United Nations Security Council is one of the 6 principal organs of the United Nations charged with ensuring international peace and security, accepting new members to the United Nations, and approving any changes to its charter. St. Vincent and the Grenadines will take its seat in January 2020 for a period of 2 years. 2 history lecturers at the SVG Community College commended Dr. Adrian Fraser on the publication of his latest book, From Villain to National Hero, Châteauguay and the Early Struggle for Independence of St. Vincent. Speaking at the book launch recently, the community college lecturers said the book addresses the known inaccuracies in other history books and that it should be listed to be used in schools across the country.
Of another, very often reeking with inaccuracies. A noted case being the death of Châteauguay. On pages 67 and 68, the position is taken based on the previous knowledge of this period that the narrative of a duel was unlikely. The use of guerrilla warfare, the timing, and the duration of the battle stands in contradiction of this story. To compound his argument, Dr. Fraser states, quote, "The death of Châteauguay would have been such a prize to the British that his defeat in any duel would certainly have been mentioned and Major Leot singled out." I turn your attention to the cover. Particularly the image of the loincloth. This image would have been interpreted based on colonial values as barbaric and undesirable.
Emancipation, we as Vincentians can shed the shadow of colonialism and embrace the pride, fight and spirit of the indigenous people. Dr. Fraser was able to successfully appeal to this idea. There is the call for a rethinking of our past. This challenge calls for our experts in curriculum development to revamp existing glorification of the Europeans as heroes and implant in our spring of ideas our own heroes, men and women with whom we as Vincentians can identify. So on that note, I want to congratulate Fraser on an excellent publication, and I think this should be part of our curriculum in all of the schools. And I hope too that the Ministry of Education can take on board the curriculum development, maybe to create a comic, develop a sort of comic strip wherein the youths from very early can read about the exploit and achievements of Châteauguay and the indigenous.
In his book, Dr. Fraser also focuses on SVG's lone national hero, Joseph Châteauguay, with the hope that Vincentians would have a better understanding and appreciation of his struggles, which eventually led to SVG's independence.
Now, I've always have an objection to us having national heroes at this particular time for a number of reasons. But I also felt that Châteauguay, because that is in the citation, that Châteauguay had not been given his due. It is only recently, I think, we had the Châteauguay National Park, and the obelisk was established in 1985. And there's a lot of ignorance about Joseph Châteauguay, and I meet people all the time who ask me questions and who give comments, and I think some of this was mentioned before. A few persons told me, is Châteauguay for real? How come there's no Châteauguay in St. Vincent? I said, I don't believe there was any Châteauguay.
Learning from the past, celebrating the moment, shaping the future. This is a theme under which the Division of Teacher Education of the SVG Community College is celebrating its 55th anniversary of operation. Today, a church service was held to kickstart the activities which will be held to observe the milestone. Deputy Dean Dr. Godwin James says 55 years is a huge accomplishment for any organization or institution, as he reflected on the establishment of the division, which started out as the SVG Teachers College.
Not only has there been a move in building structure and location, but also in the programs offered and the student intake. Let's reminisce with one of the first students from the class of 1964. Mrs. Ainola Tucker states, the Teachers Training College opened its doors in 1964, the 27th of October, when it offered the certificate program in teacher education. Classes were held at the old grammar school building. 2 rooms were occupied for use. Assembly, lectures, and everything else were held in the main hall. The smaller room was that supposedly the library was filled with empty bookshelves, no books. There was a big sign over the door marked library.
Dr. James said that the division has come a long way despite many challenges.
Still resemble the physical setting of the 20th century. This physical space consists of chalkboards, dim lights, open classrooms, few or no electrical outlets, and the neat rows of desks and chairs to accommodate classes. Nevertheless, our student teachers do not sit passively and are lectured to. Rather, the lecturers ensure that the student teachers become active participants in their own learning, thus creating an environment which caters to the 21st century learner. Lecturers have reviewed their course outlines to bring them in line with online and distance education programs. These have incorporated the Learning Management System Moodle to present lessons online using the flipped classroom methodology, where the student teachers interact with the presentations at home and then come to the classroom to discuss and share ideas on the topic, thus ensuring that there is more active participation from the students.
Pastor Adolph Davis, who led the service, challenged the student teachers to live up to the expectations of the learning institution.
So we can look back, we can look forward. Jeremiah is saying here, God warned the people, destruction is coming. so you better change now. I am saying to you, my brothers and sisters, our education system, our nation at large, this warning of Jeremiah is extremely relevant at this time.
One of the first teachers to attend the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Teachers College in 1964 was Winston Backus, who described his experience at the institution as life-changing and unforgettable. Backus, who hails from the Richland Park area, has been part of the education system for 40 years. He served as a classroom educator for 20 years and an education officer for another 20 years. Backus said that his journey as an educator has been fulfilling both on a personal and professional level.
I feel proud that I have been able to make a contribution to education in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. One of the centers that I attended. After I graduated from college, I was appointed there, and I taught many teachers, because the same grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 teachers used to attend at the center.
At the center, right.
Yeah. So I had that center for a while. Wasn't very long, because they needed my services. Had an influence on teachers also, because I remember quite plainly that when I taught the grade 3 group at Stubbs Teachers Training Center, I got 100% pass. Which was
we need to
which
bring
was a
it
record.
back. We need to bring it back.
He said that one of his major achievements in the education system is being asked to write the National Pledge of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
In 1970, at that time I was appointed as education officer, and Sir Rupert John was the then governor. He was the first native governor of St. Vincent. He intimated to the chief education officer that he would like to visit as many schools as possible. I was appointed to accompany the governor on these visits. So after visiting a few schools, sometimes we got there while they were having assembly, prayers and assembly and so on. And after visiting a few schools, one day he suggested to me, he said he would like the children to have a pledge to repeat every morning at assembly time.
Backus said that he was also pleased to receive the Queen's Award in 2010 for his contribution in education. Transparency and accountability are the cornerstones of quality assurance, and evaluators with the National Accreditation Board have to be professional when assessing institutions. So says Andrea Hazel of the National Accreditation Board as she addressed the ceremony on Friday to mark the re-registration of the American University of St. Vincent with the National Accreditation Board. Given the evaluators' reflection on the re-registration process, Hazel said it was a long and arduous task with much work put in by representatives of the National Accreditation Board and the university itself. She commended the university staff for its efforts and said their hard work is a beacon of quality.
The university stepped up to the plate and was able to fill the missing gaps. Given the mandate AUS had to meet and what appeared from the standpoint of the evaluators, there was a rush to get things done. I could imagine the AUS team worked overtime because, as mentioned before, the situation looked bleak. The additional documents were presented on the morning of the external site visit, 23rd July 2019. I must admit that this placed the review team under some pressure to corroborate evidence and produce an unchallenged report. However, we knew what we were looking for. As an evaluator, given what I had seen before, the university was able to improve upon what it submitted within record time. This presents an opportunity for AUS to demonstrate quality and engender among other institutions to commit to higher levels of quality in the industry.
Hazel said the work of an evaluator is crucial in facilitating quality service and protecting the board against liability.
External evaluators, our duty is to perform thorough investigations, as quality assurance is at the apex of the registration and accreditation process for higher education institutions in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Our indirect duty is also to guard the National Accreditation Board against possible litigations, and so transparency and accountability are cornerstones in the culture of quality assurance. Furthermore, the decisions of the National Accreditation Board on the registration or accreditation status of an institution or program rest on qualitative criteria rather than on inflexible or absolute quantitative standards. Therefore, evaluators must be knowledgeable, professional, competent, and objective in order to provide sound and reliable recommendations to the board.
Bahamas government ramping up public awareness campaign in the fight against climate change weeks after Hurricane Dorian devastation. This from the region. When we return, stay with us.
That was a local news segment